Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Leaving a Rich Legacy. I have Coach Sheena Major here with me today, and I'm so excited for her to share her story. I was just sharing with Coach Sheena that it's been about 2 months since I've recorded anything. And some of the topics we talk about on this podcast is just real life issues, mental health, stress, anxiety, really work life balance, and knowing when to step away. And that's what I've done to take care of myself. So I'm super excited to have her as my first guest, returning, but then also talking about some topics that are really important. So, this is basically a love letter to my younger self. It's talking about mental health, relationships, marriage, friends, money, things that I wish I would have known as a child. And I'm sure many of us can relate. There's just conversations we don't have in the Black and Brown community. And this podcast is an opportunity to discuss those. So, super excited to have Coach Sheena with me. And I'm just going to start it off with tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Coach Sheena?
Okay. Hi. Well, first, I want to say thank you for having me on today. It's a blessing. It really is to be able to meet you and have an opportunity to share my life with your viewers and your listeners. So I'm thankful. So, the question a little bit about me and who am I? First, I'm a child of the king. We all know that. But facts, if you want facts, I'm a mom of four. I have a 31-year-old daughter. I have a 26-year-old son, a 17-year-old who's graduating from high school this year, and I also have a 9-year-old as well. I've always been in the area of education. I did my master's. I've taught several levels of elementary school, and currently I work from home as a family provider of children ages newborn up to school age. So I'm busy most of the time during the day. So that's just, I like to read, I like to walk for my mental health. That's key for me. And it's pretty regular.
Well, Coach Sheena and I unofficially met through YouTube. And you have supported me in my women's improvement calls. And I had an opportunity to join your call last month, your group monthly coaching calls. But you're really open and transparent about your healing journey and why it's important. Can you just kind of share like what started that for you? And I see you have your book behind you, but you
Um,
really remind us you can heal, right? It's important to heal and self-love. So how did that journey start for you?
oh, it goes way back. Um, One day I just kind of realized this is not how I want my life to look. And I talk about in the book, there was an incident that happened with me when I was in my bedroom, and my daughter was 3 at the time, who's 9 now. And we were cuddling, and her dad came in the room, and he was irate and very aggressive and physical. And it was scary. And I honestly didn't know if I was going to make it. So that really let me know I've got to get serious about what I'm doing and how it's affecting my children, my kids and myself, because I wasn't putting myself first. Now, before that incident, it's very interesting because I had been working on myself through a program called Celebrate Recovery. And I was going, regularly. It was a Friday night thing, and then it ended up switching to Wednesday. And that was a group that um, I went to that helped with codependency. So I had been trying to get myself on track and healing, and there was a lot of um, tension in the home. But when that particular incident happened, I knew that there is no turning back. I had to go full speed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it for you, it was just one event. that was like, I need to make a change. Um, but I'm sure there's some other things that may have led up to that as well. When you made the decision to choose yourself, right, and make yourself a priority, what did that feel like for you?
Well, there's a story to that too, because everything happens, it's like gradual. Nothing just like happens and all of a sudden I choose myself. I had to decide that I wanted to first, uh, and I had to realize that I couldn't focus on others. I couldn't focus on really mainly my ex-husband because for me with healing, if I could fix him, then I would be better. That was my whole thing. If I could get my ex-husband to pull himself together, right? And may God bless him and do what he's going to do and move in his life. But I was married at the time and a lot of things were going on between us. And I was always focused on him. So I believe that my healing came from outside of me. And if I could control him and get him to stop doing this or do that, then I could be better and we could live this happy life. And then it was never happened.
It's funny when you said it's a story. You're a great storyteller, so I just want people to know that. You, you're great at, sharing in the way you share, so I'm not surprised about that because you are so open and transparent about your journey. But you mentioned, kind of carrying the weight of thinking it was your responsibility to fix him. And I feel like so many of us can relate to the point where, I'm single now, but one thing that I've said to myself is if I meet someone, I've got to ask myself if nothing ever changed about them, can I be with them, right? If nothing changes. So when you think about like that desire to want to fix him, I just want you to kind of shed some light on did it was there a point where you realized like this isn't going to happen? It's not within my control?
Yeah, there were several times that I said to myself, this isn't working. Um, I realized that there were other things going on with him. He had addiction issues were going on. So that's a big piece of my story as well, because I didn't know anything about that area and I had to educate myself about what was happening with him because I felt responsible to make sure he was okay and he was all right. And there's this cycle that goes on within a relationship where you're kind of trauma bonded to a person, meaning that you don't feel okay unless you know they're okay. And you're emotionally attached to them. And that's what was happening with me. So if I could fix him and get him better, then I could go on. And there's this push and pull where I couldn't function really without him because I got my value and my worth from fixing him and working on him and anybody else because I was a codependent and a people pleaser. So not just with them, but in any relationship I had to rescue people and I had to save people and I had to nurture and care for everybody except myself. And it was exhausting. It was really tiring. It wasn't working. It wasn't working.
You know, I have been there at times where I feel like I gotta rescue folks, and you have to be you wanna help people so much. When you just talk about codependency and what that looks like for anyone who is not aware if they are, and if they don't really know what that looks like in general.
Right. Codependency, simple definition, you kind of put everyone before yourself and you have to make sure that everyone else is okay so your life can stay in order. You tend to people please, you want to like I said, rescue and fix, really. It's this vicious cycle of if I'm not helping someone, I'm not enough or I'm not good enough. And I learned through that process that when I would do that, it was a distraction. So I didn't have to look at myself and take care of myself and figure out what was happening with me. and why I was choosing the people I was choosing and why I had the behaviors I had. Because I saw a pattern in my life that every situationship or person was pretty much, they looked different and maybe sounded different, but they were the same type of person. Why did I keep attracting the same type of person? That was huge.
So dating the same man, just a different body. Yeah. And I've done it. I have done that. And the realization, it is like you're putting a mirror to yourself. Like now you have to challenge and do some self-reflection. So what did that look like for you? Just like self-reflecting on the fact that there was a pattern.
Well, it's interesting when I go back, everything goes back to childhood, whether we want to be ready to admit that or not. It all goes back there. So I had to, when I got on this healing journey, I had to look at what happened to me when I was younger. And there were some pretty traumatic things that I dealt with. Um, Actually, right up until my healing journey started, um, oh, it's been 8 years ago now. In April, I think was 8 years. So pretty much all my life, I had experienced some form of abuse or, you know, sexual inappropriate behaviors and things like that against me. And it really shaped the people that I picked. Because what happens is you tend to gravitate towards the people like people, you gravitate towards people who are like the person who hurt you or abused you because you want to fix it. You want to go back and try to make it right. So you keep getting attracted to the same type of people so you can undo what was done. And doesn't work. Yeah, hard.
That's deep to just like bring it back to childhood because you're right. A lot of our behaviors and the things that we do, the root of it really is from childhood. And if you start pulling back the layers, it's probably the generation before us, right? And there's just some things that we experience or don't talk about. And I know in the Black and Brown community, we don't talk about, any type of assault at all, sexual assault. So for you, like, are you comfortable just sharing a little bit about that for anyone to know those, how do you overcome that? Or you might still be working through it.
Every day you work on yourself. Every day you look in the mirror and you say, I love you, Sheena. You call your own name and you affirm yourself. But my abuse started when I was younger. In my home, I was molested for years and years, up until middle school, really. So because of that, I had a lot of mental health problems, but I didn't realize they were correlated, you know? You just kind of deal with it. And I didn't tell anybody what was going on until I was, I think, 24 when after my son was born. And, you know, you just didn't, no one believed you.
Yeah.
So, well, actually, let's back up. When I was probably 8, somewhere around 8, I think I told my mom, but it got dismissed. So I learned at a really young age, like I didn't matter, or things that were going on with me didn't count, or there was an excuse for the other person doing it. So it's okay, like you'll be fine. So I acted like I was. Then as you get older and you grow, you keep picking these same types of people who keep abusing you over and over. And it can become a vicious cycle. So it's not until you can get a moment, some clarifying moment where you're like, hey, let me just this. Like, this isn't who I am, because for years I felt dirty and I was ashamed of who I was. I remember, like in my 20s and 30s, I would not leave the house without makeup on or anything because I thought everybody could see what was happening to me, between the molestation and then, this went on in my neighborhood. It was like anybody who saw me, they could tell 'cause I just gave off this sense like easy target, really. So this was going on. I remember, and I think I shared this in my book. I grew up in a neighborhood where there was a community pool, and I was taken advantage of by the lifeguard there. And then there was an incident when I went on a college tour and I was raped there. So I just have over and over this pattern of these violations after violation. And then I got into another relationship and repeatedly raped there, like for 3 years. So you just become like, this is what it is. Like, this is what I deserve. I just have to deal with this. And I ended up, Coach Jessica, actually getting cancer during the time when I was going in that 3-year relationship when all that rape was happening. And that really was another thing that kind of woke me up out of it. But like I said, it's a whole process because when you're conditioned for so long, when you're violated, you just take on that spirit of just use me, like mistreat me. It's okay. It's okay. It's never okay.
Well, Sheena, that's one, thank you for being open and transparent. But you know, that's a lot to go through. And for you to share at a young age, you tried to express that and you felt like you were not heard or valued. That speaks volumes because it could carry forward.
Yeah.
So going through all of that you've experienced, and you always seem, full of joy in your videos, and you want to share and help others. How did you how did you get here? Like, how did you start your
Yeah.
self-love and healing journey?
Yeah.
What are
Well,
things
like
that
I
you
said,
did?
yeah, like I said earlier, it really came down to me going to the group, the codependent group, and then I just started to devour any material that I could on narcissism and codependency and anything self-help. And I became so focused on it. I looked up videos on YouTube and found some personalities there that spoke to me. And I just began to build up myself. And I stopped putting the focus on my abusers. And why did this happen? And they did this. And, now I'll never, have this or whatever. And I just started focusing on who am I? Like, who am I called to be in this world? And why am I here? And asking myself really deep questions and finding out that God wants me here and He loves me. And He's got a plan for me. And these terrible things happen to me, but they're not me. These terrible things happen because He's got great things for me to do and say. So the enemy sets up these snares along the way. This perpetrator, this abuser, this perpetrator, this abuser, to try to stop us from our greatness and our path. And when I had to look at this thing with spiritual eyes and realize this has nothing to do with me. This is God's divine will for me. Um, and be okay with that. And I was never mad at God for anything that ever happened. I never blamed Him for anything. And I think that's His grace because a lot of times people get stuck there, or they're angry or they're upset. But I had to say, I'm the apple of God's eye. I'm His chosen daughter. He loves me more than the sand of the sea. And that's a lot of sand. Think about the last time you went to the water and the beach. So if He loves me that much, I have to stop talking to myself negative and telling myself I'm dirty and I'm no good and I'm not enough and I'm ashamed of who I am because in essence, God lives on the inside of me, right? I say that all the time. So if He does, I'm denying Him and what He created and what He did. And it's just really one day at a time. one day at a time. And I had to look at myself and my life, and I had to release the pain. Like each incident, I had to go back in there and, recall it, the story in a way that I could um, let myself know that it wasn't my fault. There's nothing I did wrong. There are just bad people in the world who did bad things. And just grow, wanting to grow, and not being mad at my abusers. Like I don't hate any of them. I don't hold anything against them. I don't really think about them. And if they do come up through a coaching call, because I'm using it as teaching, my body doesn't react anymore because I learned how to, um, go within to heal. Yeah, it did.
You so you mentioned that your body doesn't respond when you have to bring up um if you happen to bring them up in like in your coaching. And there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score. I can't remember the author, but it talks about how our body like relives
Yeah,
those traumatic experiences. And you even talked about like, mental health and not knowing that's what it was growing up because, one, it's not wasn't talked about in our community much. But you do when you have traumatic experiences, it's easy to relive those moments and pieces of it and be triggered by certain things and you not even be aware of it. So I think that is a I'm sure that there are things that you're still working on through it, but that's amazing that you can help others. But then also so in tune with yourself and your healing process that you're aware of that. So that's awesome. You talk about like self-love and loving yourself and at one point you felt like you weren't worthy. Why do you think self-love is so important?
oh my goodness. The obvious answer for me is because God is love, right? And he lives on the inside of me. So why wouldn't I love myself? Like, why wouldn't we do that? Right? But how do we get there? How do we get there? It's just being able to take every part of yourself, the things that you don't like so much, and then the things that you do, and acknowledge the things you do, but those things you don't, and sit with those and ask yourself why. Like, where is this stemming from? Like, my big thing is my hair. Okay, like, let's talk about it. Growing up, my hair was it was just a lot, right? It was cut really short, and I had the Jerry curl, and I mean, it was just a lot happening. And then I started a new school. I mean, it was a whole thing. And, I began to attach my self-worth to like, if I don't have long flowing hair, then I'm not pretty. And then unfortunately my mom would always say, oh, when your hair's longer, you look better. Oh, this is how I look, whether it's long or not. So that's kind of messed up. But like just starting to love the things you don't like about you that maybe could change. I could do my hair and take care of it so it'll grow and that kind of thing. But just talking to yourself in a way that's loving and in a way that's kind. And these are not things people don't know, they're really simple, but it's doing them regularly. It's looking in the mirror and saying, I love you. It's giving yourself a hug. I say that all the time. Right? Some people go days with no one touching them. So hug yourself, right? That's a good thing. Look in the mirror and affirm yourself and remind yourself that you are the creator's beloved. There's no one like you, right? Or like me. And that's a miracle. It's a miracle. And the other thing that I do and I teach people is make commitments to yourself regularly. And this was my biggest one because I wouldn't follow through with things, right? So I had to learn how to tell myself that I was going to do A, B, and C, no more than 3 things a day. Write them down before I went to bed, and the next day I had to complete it. And they could be very small tasks or bigger tasks, but one usually in the area of a chore around the house, one area in self-care and business. and get that task done. The chore could be just, making sure the dishes are cleared out of the sink before you go to bed. Okay, I think that you can do that, right? Not that hard. A business thing is just, send that one email. Simple, not hard. Do those 25 jumping jacks for your self-care. And then you begin to build this momentum, and then your confidence begins to build because you see that you can complete things. You can do things for yourself. You can keep a promise to yourself. So that was my really go-to thing, and it helped me along. Mm.
Um, I'm laughing at the jumping jacks because I know you've mentioned before, like you would make up different
Listen,
workouts and you're like, hey, if it
oh,
works,
listen. Jumping jacks the go-to. I got my water, my gallon of water over here when I go up and down my stairs. Just little things, like incorporate little things into your day that show yourself, hey, I'm here. Like I notice me. Because in these unhealthy relationships, we find ourselves that we're trying to get someone to notice us all the time, to see us so they can bring value to our life. Well, no, you're already valuable. You don't need anybody to do that. You already are. That's cool.
so you've worked on your self-love and being intentional about loving on yourself, right? It's just not a checkbox. You're doing things or have habits in place that are simple, and things that people don't think about, as a form of building up your confidence. When it comes to healing after a relationship and just really healing in general, because I feel that sometimes in our community we don't understand the importance of healing. Why do you think healing is so important?
Because you got a job to do. You got people to serve. You got people who are counting on you. So if you can't become all that God called you to be, how are you going to go help someone else? I remember COVID had hit. So it was 2020, right in March. Now everybody's home from school. Everybody's home. I got the daycare kids in the house. I got my kids. There's a lot happening. So May finally comes around, and I said, that's it. I'm gonna, sign up to start my coaching business. And that was what I don't remember the question, Coach Jessica. That makes sense right there. Where am I going with this?
Why is healing important? So it's
Oh, why is healing
2020.
important? Yeah, because we got a job to do. So that's when I made the decision in 2020 to begin to want to help people. I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know how to copy and paste in 2020, honestly. So yeah, a little tech challenge. But I said I have to try. I have to try. So I signed up for a mastermind and, you know, did a group thing to build a website and try to get some systems in place. But I just had to put one foot in front of the other so um, we can move about in this life with purpose. But if we're carrying around things from our childhood and from these old relationships that have already ended, but you're still thinking about the guy all the time, you can't function in God's will. It's hard to do that because your heart's divided. Choose this day who you're going to serve. As for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. In order to do that, we've got to want to be like Him. God is not confused. God's not unhealthy walking around, right? And so we want to be like Him.
So I healing is important, right? And you shared just, why it's important in general, but what about after an unhealthy relationship? Sometimes, we can jump from relationship to relationship without self-reflecting, without healing or realizing we need to heal. But for anyone who, maybe just getting out of an unhealthy relationship or in that process, why is it important for us to heal during that time?
You can have a relationship end,
Relationship end.
but still be in it. And I can say that because I had my ex-husband, he moved out of the house and then we ended up eventually getting divorced, but there's still work to be done in that space, right? So a lot of people think just because I finally had the courage to end the relationship, which is a good thing, that I'm okay. So then you meet someone else and the same things are happening again. So we have to take the opportunity when we do have the courage to end it, to then go within and work on ourselves. What does that look like? How do you do that? You've got to get your journal out and you got to get your pen and paper out and you got to write down, okay, put the guy's name at the top of the page, right? Okay. And then list every bad thing he did that's counterfeit to you, right? Every um, comment he said that hurt your feelings, every action he took against you, every betrayal, and write it down and look at that and say, this is what I allowed, and take ownership of it and look it in the face. I'm reading a book now by John Deloney says, heal your past, change your future. So we've got to own your past, change your future, excuse me. So we got to look at what we allowed into our lives and own that. And then, next to those lists, say, I'm sorry that I allowed that person to treat you. And I love you, and that will never happen again. And you got to do that for each one. And you got to go back to all these situationships you've had, and you got to call it out. And you got to look at it, and you got to take responsibility for your part, not the violations and things like that. Those are never your fault. But that once you realize this isn't okay, but you kept letting it happen again and again. Why? What hurt you so bad in your childhood that you keep letting this person violate you in this way, that you don't stand up for yourself, that you don't speak up for yourself? Why are you doing that? So the best way is to face it, write all the offenses down, and get it journaling about them. It's very healing. I had to do it. A lot of journals and my what is it?
So you okay, powerful because you recognize that although you were violated, there was some ownership. And that's not easy, I think, for most people to, say like, okay, what's my part in this? Right? I couldn't control that. Those are things that are outside of your control, but still being able to take some ownership of it. And I like the journaling idea, just highlighting everything and then putting something else next to it so that it's not your responsibility. Or, you can't own that piece, but what are some of the things that you can own? And journaling is just therapy in itself. So definitely like that idea. And thank you for kind of sharing your perspective because I do feel like some of us just desire to be in a relationship, to be married. There's nothing wrong with that because I do desire to be married and have
Okay.
have children. But we jump from relationship to relationship, or we don't heal. To your point, what's the root cause of allowing some of the things to happen, and then it can easily put you in a position to experience the exact same thing in the next relationship.
Yeah. Like example, when I went on that college tour and the rape took place, and it was a very traumatic experience because everybody was in the hotel room, everybody watched. I showered for 5 hours after that day. I didn't talk for 2 weeks. I mean, when I got back home, I was 17 years old. Fast forward, what, 17, 20, 20 years, I find myself in a relationship where I'm repeatedly raped every day, saying I'm never going to let him do that again. But then I do. Well, why? Because at the time when I was in the hotel room, I lost my voice. I couldn't speak. I couldn't say, hey, I don't like that. Stop. I let it went on. It went on. It wasn't my fault, but I had to learn to have a voice. I had to learn how to speak up for myself. And that's hard to do when you've been violated over and over again. Because the tricky thing about it, especially as a child and you're young, and then as you're growing into and maturing, your body responds a different way. Like, oh, I'm bad because this doesn't feel that bad because the body is designed in the right setting to bring pleasure. So why am I letting this happen? And it's kind of like when I fast forward to 20 years, when you're in the same situation as raped repeatedly, your body just shuts down. Your body shuts down. I remember one time he wanted to come over and I was like, no. So I got punished for that. Like he wouldn't talk to me for days because he had to make a point that I don't put myself first. And things would click like, hey, that's not right. I can say no. Like I don't have to do that because that's what they want. And just learning that I have a voice. So when you're in these relationships and you're trying to get out of them or you're out of it and you want to rush back in one, you've got to look at what behaviors you had in the last one that you don't want to bring to this one. And if you haven't worked through anything, you will. You will. So another exercise, you can look at the things um, that happened to you and how you responded to them. And you practice with a doll or stuffed animal conversations that will bring honor to you and not so much focused on what they need and what they want and what makes them feel good and will pacify them, because a lot of times we just lose our voice and we move on to the next one, but we haven't spoken out against the wrongs. We haven't spoken out against them. Hey, you don't get to talk to me like that. I don't like that. If you talk to me like that again, I'm leaving your presence. No one taught us to do that. That's what we have to do. You have to speak to that thing, to cast that thing down.
Just a lot of things that we aren't taught about, right? I feel like as far as relationships, like no one sat me down to really talk about relationships and what to expect and what not to accept, right? And when to know it's unhealthy and when to know when to walk away. And I'm sure my mom probably feels the same way about her experience, right? The generations before.
Mhm.
But having an opportunity to have these type of conversations hopefully breaks the pattern for someone, or even a mother listening to you, um, that you talked about like not feeling like you didn't have a voice. So I want to ask you, if there is a mother, because you have children now and you have girls, if there's a mother out there or parent who maybe their child has expressed some inappropriate behavior, or unfortunately it could happen. Any advice that you have about listening to your child and taking it serious?
Believe them. Believe them at all costs. You must. You must, because when a child comes to you and says, "Hey, this is happening to me," it's happening. In their mind, it's happening. It's happening, and we gotta listen to our kids. We gotta believe our kids, and we have to act on it immediately. And for some people, that may mean losing someone or letting go of someone you like that you want in it, right? But you were given a gift, this person to nurture and to care for, and to raise up, to do God's work. Don't deny that. God's counting. He chose you to be that child's parent, right? That's a high calling. And a lot of times children, we're all screwed up because we're born, right? We have these parents, they, look at the ACEs score, they're alcoholics, they're mental health, they're on drugs, they're getting beat, all these things. So we grow up seeing that stuff. So it's all trapped in our body. We're kids. We don't know how to handle it. We're just scared. We want a mom who says, I love you and hugs me. My mom didn't. So then we grow up and we go out looking for someone to hug us and say, I love you. So we'll take anything. We go out looking for the alcoholic because my dad was. So if I find one, I can fix him and make him see this is wrong so he can take care of me the right way. We live out these programs that we've had, and um, you can just, your whole life can pass you by. and you can just be an unhealthy relationship after the other, not just with opposite sex romantic relationships, but family, friends, coworkers, anybody. It's a real thing, and I'm attest to that. Like I said, I just started healing 8 years ago. So I'm a grandma now. I'm a grandma now, right? So yeah, that's not long. So my whole life I'm like, oh, that's who I am. Oh no. And you're not either, you're listening. And you've experienced some of those same things.
Do you have a voice now, Coach Sheena?
Yeah, I do, and I kind of like it. I do. I do. I do. But I've been reading God's word on on my channel, and um, it's nice. It's nice to hear the voice of God every day and the consistency with that, and knowing that there's people out there listening to and following along because His word is a healing balm. It's Him who lives inside of us. So if we can connect with Him every day and let His Spirit move and flow, we can do anything. You can heal. You can heal. I know you can. I know you can, but you have to just make a decision that you want to, and you have to do the hard work. I would always say during Celebrate Recovery, it got to a point where I was leading the small group abuse group for women. And I would tell them, it's not just on Wednesday or Friday night that we come and we process what's happened to us and what's going on, but it's every day of the week. You have to do something towards your healing and for yourself to be better every day. Get your mind together.
And if there is a woman who may be in an abusive relationship, excuse me, um, would you recommend a support group if they're wanting to leave or just trying to determine the next steps?
Yeah, the first thing I would say is safety first and always. If you're in an abusive relationship right now, an unhealthy relationship, just make sure if you are planning an exit that you're safe, that it's planned out, timed out, you've got your support systems in place because a lot of times when you're in these relationships, it can escalate the abuser and we don't want anything bad to happen. If you are in an unhealthy relationship, abusive relationship right now, and you're not ready to leave, because that could be the case, you can still do things in it to move yourself away from it. And one of my favorite skills is the number. And I don't know if you've heard me talk about the number on any of my videos, but if like say you're home and your significant other comes in ranting or raving or tearing you down, calling you names, just stay at your number. Mine's always 4. You can pick any number, but no matter what they say, don't start feeling bad about yourself because why? You know who you are in Christ. You're fearfully and wonderfully made. If they, want to start yelling and screaming at you or making you feel small, stay at your number. Don't start yelling and screaming back. That's what they want. You just stay calm, cool, and collected and have a mantra for yourself. Mine is and has always been I'm secure within myself. And that reminds me no matter what's going on, what they're up to, I'm good. And don't let them, start yelling and screaming and don't start feeling bad about who you are. Just stay right here.
Right. You know, that's a good practice. I'm sure a lot of people can use outside of romantic partners and relationships, just engaging with others. But just listening to you talk about relationships and I'm in this phase right now. Like I said I'm open to dating, but like I'm focusing on myself. And I think that's important. But there are things that I reflect back on the last relationship. And to your point, like what are things that I can do better or what are things that I accepted that, you know what, like I didn't like that. So why'd you accept it? And prepare me for the next relationship and making sure that I'm healthy. So I think this was such a powerful conversation and peace because I want other men and young men and women, but men and women my age as well. And you're in across the range that like you don't deserve to be in a relationship that's unhealthy, that you feel like you're not worthy, that you don't have a voice. Like that's not what a relationship's not supposed to make you feel that way.
No.
You're not supposed to be belittled or feel like you're not worthy. Um, it's not. I just want to say, like, you should never feel that way in a relationship.
Right. I remember when I got the I love myself, I realized, people who love themselves don't let other people hurt them. Wow, that's a good one. Like, if I love myself, why am I letting you hurt me? Why am I letting you talk to me like that? Why am I letting you treat me that way? Why am I letting you take advantage of me? Like, I love who I am, so you can't do that to me anymore. You don't get to, because I'm deciding that. I'm not waiting for you to decide that you're going to treat me right. It will never happen. It might never happen, and you're going to just be stuck in that situation forever. So yeah, people who love themselves don't let other people hurt them purposely. You don't do that. You give them love and light, and you let them go. Right? Let them
Yeah.
go.
Sometimes it's hard to let folks go, but there is a bigger reward on the other side, especially when it's unhealthy. So, Coach Sheena, if you had to go back and talk to younger Sheena, what would you tell her?
Oh, wow. What I always say, you matter and you're important. And I would tell her too that believe what the Word of God says is for you. Believe, believe what that Bible says and act on it. Be a doer of those things. And when things get difficult and hard, use your voice. He gave it to us. And speak out. Speak up for yourself. Speak up for yourself. Yeah. And no matter, I would tell myself too, no matter what's happened or how someone's treated you, that doesn't define me. It's not who you are. So don't walk around like that. Don't do that. Put your shoulders back and your chin up and smile and know that you're valuable, you're loved, and you're not. You know?
I always that's gonna be my thing. So, is to ask people about the conversation with their younger selves, because this is a love letter to my younger self. So I want to know, like, what would you say to your younger self? What would you tell her, or for the men, what would you tell him? Because it's a good opportunity to sometimes also heal the younger Jessica to let her know we're okay. That's not an issue anymore. We've moved past that. And then sometimes those affirmations are needed for that part of us as well.
Yeah,
So thank you. So you have your book behind you.
I do.
Okay. I have your book here as well. And like I said, I listen to your YouTube channel, Study Time with Coach Sheena. I will say it does help me to read my Bible verses because Coach Sheena is reading them to me and we're going through the Bible together. But how did you come to write your book?
Oh my goodness. So remember that mastermind I told you about? I got through all that, and then I ended up later on joining a different one. It was a book challenge. It was a 7-day challenge to write a book in 7 days, no matter how long or how short, just get it done. So that's what I did. I wrote it in 7 days. I had my assistant come, and she took care of the daycare, and I wrote the book. I followed along with the guy heading the group, and I didn't miss a homework assignment. I didn't miss a beat because I was just gonna do it, and I did. And the way the book came about though is when I was in that first mastermind, when I decided to, do the coaching, we had to build a, um, a coaching program during those weeks. So I remember on my bed, I was up like 2, 3 in the morning and I was just writing I wrote down everything I did to heal. Everything. Every everything I read, everything I heard, I called it to remembrance. I pulled out journals and notes, and I just put it in a 12-week coaching workbook program. I wrote it down, so I have all the exercises I did. Everything's in there. So the book is really based on that. Those every chapter, there's 7 chapters. The eighth one is like the wrap up one, but those 7 chapters are um, the 7 pillars that I used to help me heal. Okay,
So, one thing I have to say about listening to this conversation, like you have really prioritized yourself. And I think that, self-love and self-care and healing is super important. But, along your journey, and you said, it's only been 8 years, but just listening to how you got to where you are, like you made a decision to choose yourself. You made a decision to prioritize yourself, um, and do what's aligned with your purpose. So I think that is awesome. And I don't know if you celebrate yourself or recognize yourself often, but like that is amazing for sure.
when it comes to self love and self care, it can get used a lot. People have to understand you have to do something like hardcore work. And you brought up the younger self and the little girl, the little Sheena. And that's another great exercise is go back to a moment when you were hurt by a parent or a loved one or an ex or somebody, whatever age it was, and have a conversation with her. Your adult self has a conversation with the little Jessica and little Sheena. And you say, hey, I'm sorry that happened to you, that hurt you, didn't it? And you talk to yourself like you would have wanted a nurturing, loving adult to come to your rescue and me. And it's so healing, it's so helpful, but it's work to heal. It's not just gonna happen because I want to heal. Well, okay, but you have to do something. You have to do something, or
It
you're
is
not.
real work.
Yeah, it's serious business here, but you're worth it. You're important. You got to show up for yourself. You have to. You have to.
Yeah. We are all worthy of what's on the other side of healing, and it is work. And sometimes it can get ugly, and I mean ugly as in crying when you start peeling back those layers. But it could be tears of joy as well. It can be on both sides of the spectrum. So Coach Sheena, if is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience that you haven't stated yet?
Yeah, I've got some things cooking. This nonprofit that I've got my incorporation papers in, and that's exciting. So I've got Sheena Major Ministries, and that side of me. I don't think I shared on this call. My very best friend, growing up since 7th grade, she committed suicide, and she was in a domestic violence situation and things like that. So my ultimate dream, right, is to have a home for women that they can go and get support and have process groups and a safe place to just share and talk like we're doing now. Um, yeah, so that's what's cooking. So if anybody's out there got any prayer warriors on your podcast, keep that in prayer. And that's my latest venture.
I will tell you for sure, if there's one person, it will be my mother, because she is my number one prayer warrior, and she listens. So I would guarantee you
Oh,
that will
well,
be
she's adorable on the call. She's just adorable. You're blessed to have her for a mom.
yeah. Thank you. For sure, I know, but we will be praying with you as you start your nonprofit and for your vision of having a home for women in those situations because I've never been in that situation, but I know that it's not easy to walk away. And like we talked about, sometimes there are some mental and emotional pieces there that keep you tied until you want to do the work. So, yes, we will be praying with you so that everything goes well for your lunch. and for you getting that home.
You know, thank you so
Now,
much.
is there somewhere we can find you for anyone watching that may not, um,
Yes.
connected with you?
Yeah, you can find me on my website at sheenamajor.com, and I'm mostly visible on YouTube,
Okay.
getting there with posting on the other platform. But yeah, sheenamajor.com is where I'm housed, and you can find me there.
I appreciate you sharing your story, Coach Sheena, and just being open and transparent and helping, someone realize that they can heal and they are worthy.
Right, you can heal. You're important and you matter. Absolutely.
Yeah, so I appreciate it. Thank you so much, and we'll talk soon.
All right, thank you. Thanks for having